Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're heading back to Middle-earth, but we're maybe leaving the usual maps and family trees aside for a bit.
That's right.
We've got this, well, exceptionally deep stack of academic analysis here, all focused on J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings. And our mission is pretty focused. We want to pull out the really profound literary and, I guess, ethical insights, the stuff that fundamentally transforms how you, as an interested reader, might see the trilogy.
Moving way beyond just, the surface level high fantasy adventure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Getting beneath that comfortable surface.
So we're really challenging that traditional view, aren't we?
Yeah.
That Laudar is just a simple epic, maybe a big mythopoeic text.
Right.
Our sources, well, they suggest it's operating on a much more sophisticated level, both literarily and morally. And it does this mainly by kind of subverting the old fixed idea of the hero.
Okay.
So we'll be looking at this through two main critical lenses. They're interconnected, and they really reveal the trilogy's, well, its modern core.
Okay, so the first lens. This gives us the sort of genre framework for the whole analysis. It comes from the big literary theorist Mikhail Bakhtin.
The giant, yeah.
We're using his key distinction between the epic hero, that faded, unchanging, kind of distant figure from way...
Absolute past, he calls it.
Right, the absolute past. And then contrasting that with the novelistic hero, the one who changes, who's self-aware, much more accessible, and is constantly being shaped by their choices.
And the second lens is more philosophical. It's rooted in the ethics of alterity difference, particularly looking at the work of Emmanuel Levinas.
Okay, Levinas. How does that apply here?
Well, this framework makes us look at how real heroism in Middle-earth is achieved. And it argues it's defined not through conquest, not through just winning battles, but through the really difficult face-to-face encounter with and ethical responsibility towards the other.
The other meaning.
Meaning the stranger, the marginalized, the weak, even the enemy. It's about how you respond to difference.
So if you, listening, have ever felt that Frodo, for instance, feels somehow more real or maybe just more complicated than classic heroes like Achilles or, say, Beowulf, then this deep dive should explain exactly why. The big question we're tackling is, how much are characters like Aragorn, Frodo, Sam? How much are they truly epic figures? And where, specifically, do they break away into that messy, flawed, really modern territory of novelistic characters?
And getting that distinction, that's the shortcut, really, to understanding the depth that's working underneath the main story of Middle-earth.
Okay, let's unpack this whole huge idea then. Where do we start?
Well, to begin, we absolutely have to nail down Bakhtin's definitions. They're just crucial for understanding the genre shift we're talking about.
Yeah.
Bakhtin fundamentally saw the epic genre as belonging to this specific category of time he called the absolute past.
The absolute past, right. So the epic hero, then, belongs completely to this time.
Entirely.
Think about it. They're complete. They're stable. Their identity is totally fixed. Right from the start of the story to the end.
No real character arc in the modern sense.
They seem, almost destined for heroic triumph. They exist mainly to embody the community's heroic ideal. Right.
That's it, exactly. And what the sources really stress is that critically, this kind of hero fundamentally lacks internal struggles. They don't have psychological depth or any real ambiguity. Things modern readers just expect from main characters now.
So no self-doubt.
None. They are represented from one single unified viewpoint. Bakhtin calls it monoglossia, one closed voice, usually the authors or the traditions.
Monoglossia.
And because their identity and destiny are fixed, they just can't experience inner conflicts about whether they're up to the task. There's no internal debate about being Beowulf. He is the hero, full stop.
That's really interesting. So the sources are basically saying this distance, this epic quality, it's intentional. This sort of monolithic representation makes the epic hero distant and frozen.
Precisely. And fundamentally inaccessible to us, to the reader's contemporary time or our moral system. The hero is flawless because they're frozen in this glorious, unreachable past.
Like a statue.
Exactly like a statue. And this is why Bakhtin argues you can't really have parody or genuine laughter about the epic hero within the epic itself. They're just too distant, too perfect to be laughed at. Can you imagine Beowulf stopping mid-fight to complain about his boots getting muddy?
No, not really.
That's Bakhtin's point right there.
Okay, so if the epic hero is fixed, frozen in time and identity, the novelistic hero is the polar opposite.
The absolute opposite, defined by flexibility, openness to change, and what the sources consistently call the theme of inadequacy.
The theme of inadequacy. I like that.
This hero, who often carries conflicting traits, strength and weakness, good impulses, bad impulses, is fundamentally incomplete and crucially aware of their own flaws.
Right. We see them struggling.
Their whole journey, especially in a quest fantasy like Lord of the Rings, involves an unavoidable inner development. Their heroism isn't just fated, it's not just handed down by birth.
It depends on.
It depends entirely on their choices, their free will, their struggles. They evolve visibly over the course of the story.
And that makes them relatable.
Hugely relatable. It appeals to modern readers because it sort of democratizes heroism. It suggests heroic qualities can belong to the ordinary person. It's about effort, about endeavor and choice, not just your bloodline or some divine destiny.
And crucially, you said the novelistic hero exists in the time of the contemporary reader.
Yes, they aren't these distant demigods. They feel like figures who allow for self-consciousness, for redefinition. The story doesn't just happen to them.
They shape it.
Their visible, often really agonizing decisions steer the action. They determine their own eventual character. And that forces us, the reader, to judge their choices almost as if they were our own.
Okay, so Bakhtin lays out 4 key areas,
Yes.
right? 4 distinctions that separate these types of heroes in a story.
That's right. He talks about their heroic characteristics, the use of language in the text, the conception of time, and the structure of space, what he calls the chronotope.
Chronotope. Okay, we'll get to that. Let's use this whole framework then to really dig into Lord of the Rings, starting with the characteristics themselves, and maybe focusing on the most, let's say, unlikely heroes, the ones who immediately signal that this isn't just a straightforward epic.
Exactly, the ones who shout, novelistic. And that, of course, leads us straight to the hobbits. Frodo, Sam, Merry, Pippin. They are the prime, shining examples of the novelistic hero in this story.
Right, they completely embody that theme of inadequacy you mentioned.
They do. They're ordinary, often timid. They lack that inherent sort of warrior intelligence you see in elves or dwarves.
They seem constantly confused, often overwhelmed by the huge historical world they've stumbled into.
Yeah, and this is where the analysis gets really fun, because the sources really foreground the hobbits' unheroic traits by constantly, deliberately detailing their basic bodily needs.
Their physical needs, like hunger.
Exactly. Hunger, comfort, fatigue, this intentional focus, it's a critical element. It's almost parodic in a way. It actively brings the grand, high-minded epic right down to earth.
And that makes them undeniably lifelike, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's what makes them resonate so deeply with us, perhaps.
Precisely. Think about how much text time is spent just discussing food and comfort. In the prologue, hobbits are basically introduced entirely in terms of what they consume.
They love eating, drinking, parties, comfort.
We learn Frodo's favorite food is the humble mushroom.
Mushrooms, yeah.
And the sources point out, a detail like loving mushrooms. That would be completely absent or totally inappropriate in a true epic about some demigod hero. It's too mundane.
We also see that constant, low-level physical discomfort grounding the story, don't we?
All the time. Remember Sam suffering through Mordor. He's desperately longing for rabbit meat. He even tries to cook a stew rabbit with herbs he finds.
Right in the middle of Mordor.
Despite the sheer, existential direness of their situation, this intense, almost comical focus on just getting a decent meal prevents the moment from becoming purely spiritual or abstract. It keeps them real.
And it's not just hunger, it's the physical journey itself.
The aching feet, the weariness, they long for their feather beds back in the Shire.
There's that great moment after Aragorn heals them,
Oh, yeah.
where they're just so relieved they compose a song praising baths after a long, hard walk.
An epic hero is never concerned with having a bath. The novelistic hero, absolutely, needs must.
And here's maybe a perfect example of this kind of novelistic humor, this grounding. That moment in the Emyn Muil when Gollum complains totally seriously
Yes.
that Sam stinks.
It's such a ridiculous, low-level base detail, but it forces the hobbits into this relatable, completely human category.
It instantly distances them from, say, the elves, who seem completely above such messy biological realities.
No elf ever stinks in Tolkien, apparently. So this inclusion of bodily needs, it prevents the hobbits from reaching that untouchable demigod status of the true epic figure.
It feels like a very conscious move towards, well, contemporaneity, realism, and maybe even a kind of affectionate poke at the grand classical form.
I think that's exactly right. Affectionate parody is a good way to put it.
Okay, so if their characteristics are novelistic, the analysis also argues that their whole quest narrative is fundamentally problematic compared to the epic tradition.
Absolutely. Lautera's quest story is deeply untraditional. For one thing, the victory itself is highly debatable, isn't it? It's deeply ambiguous.
How so?
Well, Frodo's victory, it's not achieved through his final, decisive, heroic act. It happens accidentally, really, because of Gollum.
Gollum falling into the fire.
Right. And furthermore, the evil isn't totally wiped out when the ring is destroyed. Sauron is gone, yes, but Saruman's malice lingers. The Shire needs scouring.
Right, the scouring of the Shire.
The traditional epic quest ends with the hero's clear, unambiguous triumph. Everything is restored to perfect stability. But Lottar ends with scars, with unresolved sadness, with changes that can't be undone.
And Frodo's start is different, too. His initiation is involuntary, isn't it? He's chosen by the ring, as Gandalf says, not driven by some desire for glory.
Exactly. But he still has to choose to bear it. And that's the core tension that defines the novelistic hero, that intertwining of fate, maybe, and individual free will.
And unlike a stable epic hero, Frodo expresses deep despair, hopelessness, repeatedly.
Oh, constantly. He questions what will happen after the task is done. He admits, flat out, the quest has failed Sam.
Yeah.
At one point, he just calls the whole quest a punishment. These feelings of being overwhelmed, of being physically and mentally broken, feeling hopeless, these are fundamentally non-epic characteristics.
The epic hero never doubts the mission.
Never questions his fate or his mission like that. The novelistic hero does it all the time. It's part of their journey.
And this problematic nature, it extends even to the return home. The Nostos, the homecoming.
Yes, absolutely. Traditionally, the epic hero comes home wise, mature, celebrated, and slots right back into society.
But Frodo's homecoming.
It's neither glorious nor smooth. The sources consistently describe him as shattered by the quest.
Shattered, that's a strong word.
It is, and he retreats into this quiet life, mostly focused on writing his memoirs, the downfall of the Lord of the Rings and the return of the king.
Which is itself a very novelistic thing to do, writing it all down.
It is, and this difficulty in readapting, it's key to his novelistic nature. The reception he gets back in the Shire really highlights his alienation.
How so?
Well, they mostly celebrate the visible, tangible heroism. Merry and Pippin, who helped restore the gardens, who fought against Sharky's men.
They saw them in uniform, basically.
Right. Or Sam, who settles down, becomes mayor, raises a family, very visible contributions. But few people knew, or maybe even wanted to know, about Frodo's inner burden, his unseen struggle. They just saw him as this strange, quiet hobbit. Maybe a bit damaged.
That really is the classic novelistic ending, isn't it? The returning soldier who just can't quite fit back into the world he fought to save.
It has that feel, yes. And his final decision to leave for the Grey Havens. It's the ultimate act of alienation, of retreat, in a way. It strongly reflects these novelistic traits. He's a broken internal hero, not a triumphant external victor ready for parades.
Okay, so we have inadequacy, physical needs, a messy quest, a difficult return. What about agency? Choice.
Ah, yes, agency and visible inner conflict. This is another crucial differentiator for the novelistic hero. The analysis really stresses that the hero's capacity for choice is constantly foregrounded.
They face these cruxes where their choices determine the fate of many.
Exactly. And this is vital because it implies the hero actually has the power to steer the action, to change the outcome. Unlike the epic hero, whose actions often feel rigidly predetermined by fate or prophecy.
We see this really starkly in the contrast between Frodo and Sauron, don't we?
Absolutely. Sauron is the embodiment of static, determined, unchangeable evil. He never wavers, never doubts his path.
Pure monoglossia, perhaps.
In a sense, yes, a single unchanging note of malice. Frodo, on the other hand, his decision-making process is agonizingly transparent. We see him struggle. That makes him feel so lifelike, so relatable.
And his failures are visible, too. Human failures.
Hugely important. His ultimate failure to destroy the ring himself, right at the crack of doom.
I will not do this deed. The ring is mine.
That moment, it's arguably the most novelistic moment in the entire trilogy. We see the exact point where his will falters, where the burden becomes too much. And that visibility, that failure, is what makes him so incredibly real.
An epic hero just wouldn't fail like that at the climax.
Simply wouldn't happen. Their success is part of their definition.
And these inner struggles, they're not just limited to Frodo. They're essential, affecting nearly every major character.
Think about Boromir. His intense internal conflict over the ring and his eventual redemption through his final choices and actions.
Denethor wrestling with despair, which leads to his madness.
Even Gandalf acknowledges the potential for darkness within the good characters. He admits they all have dark and evil sides. He says of himself, "And so am I. Very dangerous. More dangerous than anything you will ever meet."
That openness to inherent flaws, to complexity, makes the characters dynamic, complicated, not flat. It moves them far, far away from that monolithic, epic ideal.
Definitely. They feel much more like people you could actually meet wrestling with real dilemmas.
Okay, let's move on then to Bakhtin's other distinctions, language and time. The sources suggest we find even more evidence here that Lauder is really operating as a novel.
That's right. The epic genre, as we said, relies on that closed and deaf monoglossia. Basically, one unified authorial voice or perspective dominates everything.
Like a single narrator telling you the one true story.
Exactly. The novel, however, thrives on the opposite. Polyglossia and heteroglossia.
Okay, those are big Bakhtin terms. Heteroglossia means.
It just means multiple voices. The author doesn't just present the world through one lens. They present a multitude of conflicting viewpoints, different dialects, various ways of speaking, different social languages, all existing in dialogue with each other.
So it's not just one voice, but many voices interacting.
Precisely. And this leads to dialogism, the use of dialogue, both external between characters and internal within a character's thoughts, being absolutely critical.
Okay, external examples first. Where do we see this dialogism playing out?
Well, think about the constant negotiation and debate throughout the story. It establishes connection between characters who, in an older kind of tale, might just remain enemies.
Like the Council of Elrond.
The Council of Elrond is a perfect example. The fate of the ring, the best route for the quest, who should be the ring bearer. It's all discussed openly, exhaustively.
With different races, different perspectives, all chiming in.
Exactly. No single figure just dictates the plan. It's a collective, messy, dialogic negotiation.
And you mentioned characters who might otherwise be enemies.
Yes. Think about the evolving relationship between Gimli the dwarf and Legolas the elf.
Ah, yeah. A classic example.
In a pure epic, their racial enmity would likely be fixed, static, part of the unchanging world order.
But Lord of the Rings.
The road chronotope, the journey itself, which will touch on more forces connection, their initial hostility. Remember how guarded they were at the council?
Very suspicious of each other.
That gives way, slowly but surely, to deep, genuine friendship. And this is demonstrated almost entirely through dialogue, through shared experience, through listening to each other.
That shift is profound, isn't it?
Yeah.
They literally learn to appreciate and even speak the language, the perspective of the other.
Completely. Gimli eventually longing to see the glittering caves of Aglarond because Legolas described them so beautifully.
And Legolas feeling the sea longing, partly through Gimli's connection to ancient things, perhaps.
These are moments of mutual respect forged entirely through dialogic interaction. It completely breaks down those old, fixed racial estrangements. Their language, their perspectives actually change because they spend time listening to the other. That's pure novelistic interaction.
Okay, so that's external dialogue. What about internal dialogue?
Internally, the dialogues are maybe even more revealing of the novelistic hero because the hero isn't complete and fixed, right? They're constantly debating their actions, their identity inside their own heads.
We definitely see Frodo doing this. Thinking about Gollum. Should he kill him? Pity him.
Yes, and perhaps most powerfully, the analysis highlights Sam's intense internal debate. Remember when he finds Frodo seemingly dead, stung by Shelob?
In Cirith Ungol, yeah. Horrible moment.
He has this agonizing internal struggle about whether to leave Frodo's body and try to continue the quest alone or stay with him. He's torn between responsibility, loyalty, self-preservation.
It's brutal.
And crucially, the sources note that in this moment of crisis, what gives him the courage to make a decision and go on? It's his own previous words.
His promise to Gandalf.
Exactly. He remembers what he himself said back at the beginning of the journey about sticking with Frodo and fulfilling his promise. The novelistic hero uses their own past, their own language, their own internal dialogue to steer their present choice. It's not some external oracle or fate dictating terms.
That's a really key insight. Okay, moving to time, the third distinction. You said the novel uses linear, specific time.
Yes, time that has maximum contact with contemporaneity, as Bakhtin puts it. It feels like our kind of time, moving forward, measurable. It's not the epic's distant, untouchable, absolute past.
And this linear time, it allows the hero to reflect.
It allows them to separate themselves from the immediate present by reflecting on the past or anticipating the future. This capacity for reflection is key to their development.
And this is where the character's self-awareness really comes into play. Makes the text feel very modern.
Absolutely. This is, for me, one of the most striking novelistic features. Frodo and Sam display profound self-consciousness about their own roles within the narrative. They actually wonder how future generations, future readers, essentially will view them and their story.
This is the moment that really breaks the mold, isn't it? It shatters that monologic unity of an artistic world, as the sources say, and pulls the narrative directly into the reader's time.
It does. Remember Sam saying something like,
Oh, yeah. What a tale we have been in, Mr. Frodo, haven't we? I wish I could hear it told. Do you think they'll say, now comes the story of Nine-Finger Frodo and the Ring of Doom? And they'll say, yes, that was the most famous member of the Fellowship.
exactly that. That act of discussing their own story, wondering about their future reception by readers, the you, he implies that's the absolute definition of self-conscious art.
It shows they're aware of themselves as characters in a story being read and judged.
Right. And through that reflection, they effectively evolve into the time of the readers. They become figures we can redefine, renegotiate with, not just fixed icons from a long-lost past.
Amazing. Okay, finally, let's tackle Bakhtin's fourth distinction, the function of chronotopes. Bit of a technical term.
It sounds technical, but it's basically just how space and time merge together in a story. Bakhtin argued this fusion is essential for defining the genre and shaping the image of a man, or the type of hero possible within that genre.
Okay. So what chronotopes do the sources highlight as being critical in Lothar?
Our sources point to two specific ones. First, and maybe most importantly, the road chronotope.
The road trip.
Instantly, yes. Unlike the often static, collective, fixed spaces you find in epic poetry, the novelistic road story allows the hero's change and development to unfold spatially and temporally. The journey itself forces interaction, forces metamorphosis, especially among groups who start out polarized.
So the road is the ultimate catalyst for the novelistic hero's change.
It often is. We see this vividly when Éomer of Rohan first encounters Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas.
Right, he's very suspicious.
Deeply suspicious. Éomer is rooted in the traditional fixed identity of a man of Rohan. He sees these strangers, thinks they might be enemies, maybe spies for Saruman.
Standard procedure for that world, maybe.
But the road, the shared necessities of the journey they are all on, forces them to interact, to cooperate eventually. And that leads to understanding and then trust.
The sources mention that the road transforms that suspicion into comradeship.
Yes, culminating in Éomer eventually lending them horses, which greatly helps their quest. This is a political shift, a personal transformation, driven entirely by the time spent traveling together on the road. It's not one single heroic deed changing minds. It's a slow, continuous process defined by shared space and time.
Okay, the road. What's the second chronotope?
The second key one is the threshold.
The threshold, like a doorway.
Sometimes literally, yes. Bakhtin used this term for spaces, physical or metaphorical, that are highly charged with emotion and value. These are points where irreversible turns happen. Moments of crisis, decision points that fundamentally alter the character's identity or path.
Can you give an example?
Well, think of Frodo's quick-witted, almost instantaneous decision to stab the orc chieftain's foot in the chamber of Moserbul.
In Moria, right as the orc burst in.
Exactly. It happens in a physical doorway, a threshold. It's a desperate, life-changing action taken under extreme pressure, right at the boundary, enabling the company's escape. That's a crisis decision happening at a threshold.
And metaphorically.
Metaphorically, the ultimate threshold might be the Grey Havens.
The ending.
That transition point, the shore, the ship. It hosts Frodo's final, life-altering decision to leave Middle-earth. It signals a complete end to his previous life in the Shire, an irreversible turn. And it cements his status as that changed, perhaps broken, novelistic hero who needs a different kind of space for closure, rather than being the triumphantly reintegrated epic hero. The threshold marks the final passage.
Okay, so we've established how Tolkien uses these novelistic structures, the characters, the language, time, space. Now maybe the bigger question is, why? How does this literary structure connect to or enable a deeper moral meaning?
Exactly, and this is where we shift focus a bit, moving from the literary theory of Bakhtin more towards ethical philosophy. Primarily using that Levinasian framework we mentioned earlier, looking at the moral core of Lothar.
Levinas and the ethics of alterity of the other.
Right. And the ethical focus here is key, because ethics in this particular view doesn't arise just from abstract rules or codes of conduct like thou shalt not kill.
It comes from...
It arises from our face-to-face responsibility to the other. The specific, concrete other person, especially the weak, the poor, the stranger, or even the enemy. This focus on alterity, on difference, it challenges any easy system that might just label the other as evil and therefore make it okay to ignore or harm them.
The sources mention that the hobbits themselves can be seen as the queer, other within Middle-earth. Queer in the old sense of unusual, different.
Yes, exactly. Unusual, outside the norm, easily overlooked or underestimated. They are unwarlike by nature, kind of unknowable to the big folk, and often associated with activities seen as maybe less heroic or feminine in that world: cooking, comfort, domesticity, gardening.
But these attributes are actually valued in this story, aren't they? Against the grain of traditional masculine heroics.
Vitally so. The quiet strength you see in Sam's unwavering loyalty and love for Frodo, or his constant practical worry about food and supplies, that's what ultimately saves the quest, arguably more than sword skills.
Gandalf even comments on how tricky hobbits are to understand.
He does. He says something like, "No power in the world that knows all about hobbits. Soft as butter they can be, and yet sometimes as tough as old tree roots. Their very difference, their otherness, is their hidden strength."
Okay, but the most powerful, maybe the most challenging example of this ethical encounter with the other has to be Frodo's relationship with Gollum.
Without a doubt, Gollum absolutely embodies the abject other.
Abject other, what does that mean exactly?
It's a concept often associated with Julia Kristeva. The abject is that which disturbs identity, system, order. It's what doesn't respect borders, positions, rules. It's the not me, not that, but not nothing either.
So something that repels you but also reflects something about you.
Exactly. It's the shadow of the self, the thing the self fears it might become. Gollum is the physical embodiment of the corruption the ring causes, a corruption Frodo feels growing in himself. Gollum is the opposite, the figure the hero is meant to see alongside his own reflection, forcing self-recognition.
And Frodo's repeated, conscious choice to spare Gollum's life is central here.
Absolutely critical. He makes this choice again and again, despite Sam's constant warnings, despite the obvious danger Gollum poses, even despite Faramir's sensible counsel. He shows pity and mercy.
And the analysis stresses that this pity, it's kind of irrational from a purely practical, mission-focused standpoint.
Completely irrational. Tolkien himself admitted that this level of pity would seem like utter folly to any prudent person just focused on destroying the ring. Success above all else.
But for the sources, this irrational pity is actually the ultimate heroic action.
It is the core heroic action here. Gandalf framed it perfectly years before, talking about Bilbo. It was pity that stayed his hand, pity and mercy, not to strike without need.
And Frodo's personal growth, his novelistic development, is shown when he remembers that earlier conversation.
Yes. He remembers wishing Bilbo had killed Gollum back then to avoid all this trouble, and he realizes how profoundly different his own attitude is now.
Why? Because he's had to actually deal with Gollum.
Because he's had to look Gollum in the face, day after day. He's taken responsibility for him, in a way. The ethical relationship moves away from just the self, away from the abstract goal of destroying the ring, and demands this conscious act of responsibility toward the vulnerable, abject, difficult other right in front of him.
That's powerful. The sources also dig into how the text reflects, and sometimes maybe challenges, ideas about racialized otherness, don't they? Which is obviously central to the history of the Western tradition.
Yes, they do. And this is where applying that ethical lens becomes really crucial for us as modern readers, looking back at a mid-20th century text.
Right. And just to be clear, we need to report this impartially. The text does reflect certain cultural ideas that were prevalent then. Generally speaking, you see fair-skinned peoples, elves, the men of the West, like the Rohirrim and Gondorians, many hobbits aligned with the good. While the swarthy or southern peoples, the Haradrim, the Easterlings, are often depicted as adversarial, associated with darkness, easily swayed by Sauron.
And this reflects, the sources argue, some common attitudes and imagery found in the West during that period.
The danger, of course, is just taking that binary fair good, dark bad at face value. But the analysis identifies a really key ethical moment that profoundly challenges this easy categorization. It provides a kind of breakthrough ethical stance within the text itself.
You're talking about Sam's encounter with the dead Haradrim soldier.
Exactly. During the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, it's a scene that's so often just passed over, but the sources really emphasize its moral weight.
It is incredibly powerful. Sam sees the dead man. You know, his black braids with gold, his brown hands still clutching a broken sword.
And he stops fighting for a moment. He doesn't just cheer the enemy's death. He doesn't rely on his theoretical knowledge that this guy is the enemy. He starts reflecting.
Instead of celebrating victory, he performs this profound ethical act of humanization. He starts wondering if this man was also torn inwardly by conflicting motivations, just like Sam himself has been.
Wondering about his home, his life, whether he was marched off to war by a power he didn't fully understand, just like soldiers often are.
He literally asks himself about the man's name, where he came from. I wonder what his name was, and where he came from, and if he was really evil at heart. He recognizes the possibility that this man is also a victim, not just a faceless foe.
So in that moment, the Haradrim warrior stops being just a theoretical evil other.
He becomes an individual, a person with a potential name, a potential story. And this reflects Sam's capacity for ethical responsibility towards the individual, face to face, not just towards the abstract concept of the enemy.
It's a moment of profound ethical reflection that really complicates the more traditional racial hierarchies that are otherwise present in the world building. It suggests that true morality, maybe, is always found in that direct encounter with the face of the other.
A truly novelistic ethical moment amidst the epic clash.
Okay, so this shift we've been tracing away from simple epic victory towards this complex ethical responsibility, it leads us towards a final sort of synthesized definition of heroism in Middle-earth, doesn't it? It seems to be defined much more by service and, maybe surprisingly, sometimes by defiance of rigid authority.
That's a great way to put it. Service and ethical disobedience.
But hang on, what about Aragorn? He seems like the most epic figure. King returning, destiny fulfilled. How do the sources fit him into this novelistic ethical framework? Doesn't he just reclaim his birthright?
That's where the ultimate nuance of the text really shines, I think. Aragorn's journey is fascinating because it's a constant negotiation between his seemingly fixed epic destiny and his very novelistic demonstration of worthiness for that role.
So he has the lineage, but he has to earn it in a different way.
Exactly. He starts out as Strider, remember? The exiled ranger, an other figure himself viewed with suspicion by the hobbits initially, and by many of the people he protects in secret.
Right, he's not immediately recognized as the king.
Not at all. And his eventual kingship, the sources argue very strongly, is not proven merely by his martial skill, his victories in battle, or even just his lineage. It's ultimately validated by what the analysis calls the feminine power of healing.
Feminine power. Interesting. How so?
Well, it comes back to that old saying, the piece of lore resurrected by the common folk, the healers in Minas Tirith. The hands of the king are the hands of a healer, and so the rightful king could ever be known.
Ah, the Ithilacene.
Precisely. Aragorn doesn't stride into Minas Tirith after the battle, plant his banner, and demand the crown based on force or birthright alone. He enters quietly as captain of the Dúnedain, and his first major act within the city is to go to the houses of healing.
To tend to the wounded. Faramir, Éowyn, Merry, Pippin.
Yes, those afflicted by the Black Shadow, this spiritual and physical malady born from despair and proximity to the Nazgul. His most important act of service is healing them.
So he achieves a vital heroic victory, not by killing something, but by facing down the psychological and spiritual shadow of death, all in the service of these vulnerable others.
Exactly. And the analysis highlights how this validates the wisdom of Ioreth, the old healing woman who remembers the lore and reminds the rather condescending master of the houses about Athelas. Kingship is confirmed by nurturing, by caring for the vulnerable, not just by wielding Andurogvam in the West. It's a profound redefinition of kingly heroism towards service.
Okay, so service is key. What about the other part? Ethical disobedience. That seems counterintuitive for heroes.
It does, but moving beyond formal authority like kingship, one of the most interesting and surprisingly pervasive findings in the sources is this theme of ethical disobedience. The analysis notes that disobedience quite frequently has a catastrophic effect.
Eucatastrophe, Tolkien's term for the sudden, joyous turn, the unexpected happy ending or resolution. So, breaking the rules sometimes leads to good outcomes.
Often, yes. It suggests that blind, rigid obedience is actually detrimental in this world. The good leaders, like Gandalf or Aragorn or Theoden, don't actually expect or desire mindless following.
Okay, examples. Who disobeys ethically?
We see it first, and maybe most clearly, with Merry and Pippin. Think about their choices. Their initial disobedience, in a sense, leaving the planned path of the Fellowship at Parthgalen by being captured.
Which leaves them to the Ents.
Exactly. Which triggers the Entmoot and the destruction of Isengard. Then, their later pledges of service to Theoden and Denethor, these are acts of personal choice, not orders.
And fighting in the final battles, often against direct or implied commands to stay safe.
Right. Their chosen actions act as catalysts for massive, positive events. Merry helping Éowyn defeat the Witch King is a prime example.
And Theoden acknowledges this, doesn't he? When Merry asks for forgiveness for breaking his command to stay behind.
He does. As he's dying, Theoden forgives him, saying, "Great heart will not be denied." It confirms that true service, true loyalty, can actually supersede the rigid following of commands. Their heroism is compounded by their ability to choose the right action, even if it means bending or breaking the rules.
Éowyn is another huge example of this, surely.
Absolutely powerful. She completely rejects her mandated role, the one Denethor and even Theoden initially try to impose of being the housekeeper, the mourner, the woman left behind. The traditional, static secondary role for women in older epic narratives.
She finds agency how?
Through her disguise as Gernhelm, through her warrior act, she actively chooses to defy expectations and ride to war.
And the sources note she feels a connection to Merry.
Yes, she's drawn to Merry partly because he too fails to conform to that traditional image of the big, strong, masculine warrior. They're both, in a sense, the othered warriors on that battlefield. The unlikely pair whose shared disobedience, whose refusal to stay in their assigned places, allows them to achieve the impossible. The defeat of the Witch King, something no man could do.
And her final choice, marrying Faramir, giving up the desire for battlefield glory, is that also framed as a kind of disobedience?
In a way, yes. It's a disobedience to her own earlier desire for renown through great deeds, that very epic aspiration she voiced to Aragorn. Instead, she chooses a different path, the novelistic service of healing, nurturing, making things grow, alongside Faramir. She finds self-actualization in a different, less traditional way, without constantly having to fight against societal norms in the same way.
Okay, Merry, Pippin, Eowyn. Any others?
And then there's Faramir. His entire ethical path seems defined by a quiet opposition to his father, Denethor, even long before Denethor's madness fully consumes him.
How so? His heroism is defined by rejecting power.
Explicitly. It's absolutely crucial, tying back to that Levinasian framework about non-domination. When he encounters Frodo and Sam and learns about the ring,
He lets them go, even though he knows it's the enemy's weapon.
he rejects the ring before he even fully grasps its true, terrifying nature. And he tells Frodo explicitly why. He says he would not save Minas Tirith, his own city, his own people, by using a power that would fundamentally dominate the other. He chooses not to make Gondor, as he puts it, a mistress of many slaves.
Wow. So his decision isn't based on fear of the ring corrupting him.
Not primarily. It's based on a deep, prior moral rejection of domination itself. He chooses self-restraint, chooses ethical responsibility towards the freedom and independence of others, above his duty to secure his own city by any means necessary.
That active refusal, that disobedience to the seemingly obvious path of power.
That's the absolute pinnacle of this redefined, novelistic, heroic ideal in Lord of the Rings. It's choosing not to use the power, even for good ends, if it means mastering others. Hashtag outro. So yeah, to kind of wrap up our deep dive here, The Lord of the Rings, when you look through these lenses, it really operates primarily as a deeply sophisticated novelistic work, just layered onto this grand epic canvas.
It uses the epic setting, but populates it with novelistic characters and concerns.
Exactly. It constantly subverts that old epic tradition through its heroes' flaws, their visible inner conflicts, the emphasis on personal choice and agency, and maybe most importantly, this profound commitment to ethical responsibility towards the other, however difficult.
So the true epic elements, that distance, the static perfection, fate, they're still there, but maybe confined more to figures like the elves, or the background forces of destiny.
That's how the sources tend to see it. They act as a kind of historical context, an ancient backdrop against which this very human, very messy, very novelistic drama unfolds.
And maybe what makes Middle-earth feel so rich, so enduring, is precisely that successful coexistence of both genres. You have the huge, sweeping, epic stakes for the whole world.
The fate of Middle-earth hangs in the balance.
But it's all overlaid onto these deeply human, deeply flawed journeys of characters who have to constantly choose between their own self-interest, their own fear, and service to the other. The heroism that really sticks with you as a reader is often found in the hobbits' vulnerability, their endurance.
And the willingness of the big people like Aragorn or Faramir or even Theoden to bend the rules, to choose mercy, to act out of ethical conviction rather than just duty or power.
Which brings us, I suppose, to our final thought. This one is drawn from the analysis of Sauron's fundamental flaw, his philosophical blind spot.
Right. Sauron's only measure of the world, his only way of understanding anyone, is the desire for power. He judges every single heart by that one single monolithic metric.
Does everyone want what I want? Power.
Basically, yes. And the sources point out that his fatal flaw, the reason he ultimately fails, is that the thought never, ever enters his mind.
What thought?
That any will refuse it, that having the ring we may seek to destroy it. He simply cannot conceive of a resistance that doesn't want to seize the ring for itself.
He can't imagine someone saying no to ultimate power.
He can't. The ultimate evil, then, isn't just malice or cruelty. It's perhaps this absolute inability to recognize the other's free will, their capacity for a selfless refusal, their ability to choose something other than domination.
Wow. Okay, so we leave you, the listener, with this question to maybe ponder, connecting this back to our own time, our own world.
What current systems or maybe power structures in our world today might be similarly doomed, or at least fundamentally flawed because they cannot conceive of an act of pure selfless refusal, because they can't imagine anyone choosing not to dominate the other if given the chance.
What modern institution maybe is built on that potentially fatal assumption that everyone, deep down, will inevitably seize power if they can.
Something to chew on, perhaps.
Definitely something to think about next time you open the Red Book of West March. Thank you for joining us on the Deep Dive.